Page 66. From the end of the 20s, the face of the Solovetsky camp changed from a slight trap for the doomed counter-revolutionaries. It was transformed increasingly into the new, but to us old, species of generalized ITL or corrective labor camp. The number of especially dangerous criminals from among the workers multiplied rapidly in the nation, and they herded the non-political offenders and hoodlums to Solovki. Both veteran thieves and beginning thieves landed on Solovki. A big wave of women thieves and prostitutes poured in, and when they encountered each other at the chem transit station, the women thieves yelled at the prostitutes, "We may steal, but we don't sell ourselves." And the prostitutes shouted back, "We sell what belongs to us, not stolen goods." Excuse me. The fact of the matter was that a war against prostitution had been proclaimed throughout the country, not in the newspapers, of course. And so they rounded them all up in all the big cities and pasted a standard 3 years on all of them and drove many of them to Solovki. In theory, it was quite clear that honest labor would swiftly reform them. However, for some reason, they clung stubbornly to their socially humiliated profession, and while en route they asked to be allowed to wash floors in the convoy guards' barracks and seduce the Red Army men, subverting the statutes of the convoy service, and they made friends just as easily with the jailers, not for free, of course. They arranged things even better for themselves on Solovki, which was so starved for women. They were allotted the best rooms in the living quarters, and every day new clothes and gifts were brought to them, and the so-called nuns and other counter-revolutionary women earned money by working for them, embroidering their underthings, and on completion of their terms, rich as never before, with suitcases full of silks, they returned home to begin an honest life. And the thieves spent their time playing cards, and the women thieves found it useful to bear children on Solovki. There were no nurseries, and by having a child, they could get themselves released from work for their whole short term. The counter-revolutionary women who preceded them had refused to take this way out. On March 12, 1929, the first group of juveniles arrived at Solovki. From then on, they kept sending them, all of them under 16. At first, they were quartered in the children's colony near the Kremlin, with those same showpiece cots and mattresses. They hid their government-issued clothing and shouted that they had nothing to go out to work in. And then they too were sent off to logging, from which they fled, switching all their names and their terms. And they had to be caught and thereupon sorted out all over again. With the arrival of a socially healthy contingent of prisoners, the cultural education section came to life, and they campaigned for the liquidation of illiteracy. But the thieves had not the slightest problem in telling the difference between clubs and hearts. They posted a slogan, "A prisoner is an active participant in socialist construction." And they even thought up a term for it too, reforging. It was here that this term was invented. In September 1930 came the appeal of the Central Committee to all the workers for the development of socialist competition and the shock worker movement. And how could the prisoners not be included if free people everywhere were being harnessed up? Then wasn't it also necessary to put the prisoners between the shafts? From here on, our information comes not from living people, but from the book of the scholar jurist Averbakh. and therefore we suggest that the reader may wish to divide this information by 16 or maybe by 256, and sometimes it even needs to be taken in a reverse sense. In the autumn of 1930, there was created a Solovetsky staff for socialist competition and the shock worker movement. Inveterate repeaters, murderers, and cutthroats suddenly emerged in the role of economy-minded managers, skilled directors, and capable cultural workers. Unquote. G. Andreev recalls, they used to scream in one's face, come across with your norm, your chaos, counter-revolutionaries. The thieves and bandits had no sooner read the appeal of the Central Committee than they threw away their knives and their playing cards and simply burned with thirst to create a commune. They wrote into the statutes of the social origin of members that the social origin of members must be either poor or middle-level peasant families or the working class, and it need be said that all the thieves were registered in the records and classification section as former workers, so that Shepshinsky's former slogan almost came true. Excuse me. Solovki for the workers and peasants. And on no account would 58s be admitted. And the commune members also proposed that all their prison terms be added together and divided by their number so as to arrive at an average term. And that, on its expiration, they should all be freed simultaneously. But notwithstanding the communist character of this proposal, the Czechs considered it politically premature. The slogan of the Solovetsky Commune was, "Let us pay our debt to the working class." And even better was the one, "From us everything, to us nothing." And here is a ferocious penalty they thought up to punish members of the Commune who were guilty of infractions, to forbid them to go out to work. Now it would be quite hard to find a stiffer punishment for a thief than that. Excuse me. Nonetheless, the Solovetsky administration, which was not about to go as far as the cultural and education officials, did not base its faith too heavily on the thieves' enthusiasm, but instead applied the Leninist principle, shock work, shock maintenance. What this meant was that the commune members were moved into separate barracks where they got softer bedding, warmer clothing, and were fed separately and better, at the expense of all the rest of the prisoners, of course. The commune members liked this very much, and for the purpose of keeping all their fellow members in the commune, they established the rule that there would be no more expulsions from it. This sort of commune was also very popular among non-commune members, and they all applied for admission to the commune. However, it was decided not to take them into the commune, but to create second, third, and fourth labor collectives, which would not have all those privileges. In any case, the 58s were not accepted in any of the collectives, even though the newspaper, the most impudent of the hoodlums, instructed the 58s. It's time to grasp that camp. It's a school for labor. And the reports were flown by plane to GULag headquarters, miracles at Solovki, a turbulent turning point in the attitude of the thieves. And all the passion of the criminal world has been redirected into shock work, socialist competition, fulfillment of the production, and financial plan. And in GULag they were suitably astonished, and they broadcast the results of the experiment. And that is how Solovki began to live. Part of the camp was in the labor collectives, and their percentage of plan was fulfillment had not simply risen but doubled, and the cultural and educational section explained this by the influence of the collective. But we know what it was: common garden variety camp padding of the worksheets. Tukta. The other part of the camp, the unorganized part, yes, and also underfed and underdressed and engaged in the heaviest work, failed, as one can well understand, to fulfill its work norms. In February 1931, a conference of Solovki shock brigades decreed, quote, a broad wave of socialist competition to answer the new slander of the capitalists and forced labor in the USSR. In March, there were already 136 shock brigades. Then suddenly in April, their general liquidation was decreed because, quote, a hostile class element had permeated the collectives for the purpose of causing them to disintegrate. Now, there's a riddle here for you. The 58s were not allowed across the threshold, and so who was it who was causing them to disintegrate? What we have to understand is that the Tukta had been uncovered. They had eaten and drunk and made merry, and they had counted things up, shed a few tears, and taken the whip to some so the rest would get moving. And the joyous hubbub gave way to the noiseless dispatch of prisoner transports. The 58s were being sent from the Solovetsky mother tumor. And the joyous hubbub gave way to the noiseless dispatch of the prisoner transports. The 58s were being sent from the Solovetsky murder tumor to far-off fatal places to open up new camps there. Thank you for listening. Start chapter 3. Have a good day.